Hey there, and welcome to the daily podcast where wisdom smacks us with either gentle kisses or slightly harder love taps. I'm MichelleSpiva, a wisdom strengthening coach, and I'm also going to be your host today. Or you can just think of me as your practical priestess serving you up with some daily wisdom, y'all. Yes, so join me as we gain wisdom, mental strength, and tackle innovative thinking, maybe address some emotional and behavioral life traps along the way. And yes, we got you. We provide you with some practical how-tos to bring it all in. So settle in, or hey, crank me up to 2x, whatever gets your mental processes flowing as we dive in. Stay tuned. Yay! Hi, this is MichelleSpiva, your hostess and practical priestess of wisdom, and I do want to welcome you to today's installment of Wisdom Smack. Mwah. So I want you to get ready to get with me because today we're going to be getting into a wisdom strategy. Oh, yes, and it's going to be really good, especially with what's going on at the time of this recording and into the future. We're going to be talking about some things that you would do well to learn strategically and tactically to be able to make it in a most wise way. So join me as we talk about the strategy of slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I'll see you on the flip. Thanks so much for joining me. And so today we're going to be getting into a wisdom strategy. And I'm going to hopefully give you some examples of how this works. And if you have the opportunity to make use of this, by the end of this time, you'll get a better understanding of how you can set it up for yourself and how you can take advantage of it. Now, I'll tell you, the way I came about thinking about this for what to share today, yesterday, I actually talked about 4 defense mechanisms that we all use with regards to when threat comes our way and all of that. And in today's environment, I thought it would be a little bit more in keeping with what's hopefully useful for us if we continue to talk a little bit more about wisdom strategy and the like. And so yesterday, when I talked about the scared but not scary, I talked about how we can operate in one, some, or all of these mechanisms. And those 4 defense mechanisms are fight, flight, fright, and fawn. Fawn, Fawn. Making sure I spell that one out, in case anyone doesn't understand my accent. I don't think I have one, but people tell me I do. So anyway, but I wanted to kind of like let people know that in times like now, it's better that you take advantage of what you can when you can. And timing is real important when it comes to strategizing to get to gain the benefit and to gain the advantage. Okay. And so there comes a time when fast is not always good. Yes, there is a first mover's advantage, and this strategy does employ that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fast first mover's advantage. And it'll hopefully make sense as we get to talking about more of this as we go through today's episode of Wisdom Smack. Okay, so let's get into it. So, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And what that means is that if you take the time, if you have the time to consider, to go into detail, do your research, gather your information, scan your environment, know opportunities, weaknesses, threats, do assessments, and all of that, this will work really great. And if you don't, then of course you can use other strategies. But there are people right now who have used this strategy at this particular time of recording. We're in the midst of what the World Health Organization has deemed a global pandemic of the COVID-19. virus. And so some people have actually used this slow is smooth, smooth is fast advantage. And I want to kind of break that down so that we will have more wisdom tools in our quiver. All right. So let me start off by giving some examples of how this has been used in the past. Okay. Um, Houdini. Houdini, the great magician, Houdini. He was known as being very smooth in how he executed his art form in his craft to the point that the naked eye could never detect what he did. And if you ever look at the training of a magician, their prestige and how they do it, it requires a lot of methodical and slow and tedious work to build certain muscles, dexterity, and the like. And he was noted as being a person who would exercise swallowing and then bringing back up small objects so that he could make it look as invisible and effortless and, yes, smooth as possible. But the practice for it was ongoing, it was slow, it was tedious, and he had to do it over and over and over again until it looked effortless. There are other magicians who talk about whether their forte is card games or sleight of hand, how they practice over and over and over again so that it looks smooth. And so that's where you get the slowest smooth, smoothest fast. Another example is now I live in Atlanta and I'm very thankful for the culture here. And there is a burgeoning culture that's coming back into vogue, which is roller skating. When I was a kid, roller skating was the place. It was the place the teens hung out, and all of that. And I remember trying desperately to learn how to roller skate, like all of the people who were really good at it could. And yeah, it didn't work. I never got to that point. I can make it. Well, I'm not sure I could do that right now because it's been quite a few years since I actually tried to roller skate again. But at the time, I could make it around the ring and I could even do a little, backwards skating. But I was never to the point where the people who made it look effortless were. And I'll just say, they spent a lot of time. It was slow going because you have to go against your natural nature to be able to have your feet planted on the ground and walking instead of rolling on little rollers that are counterintuitive to how you would behave to advance. And so they would use a lot of time to develop their craft and their practice. And many of them would be at that roller rink every day for years to get as smooth and effortless as they looked when they would glide across the roller rink and dance in smooth movements. And one of the things I also, wanted to make a note of when you're looking at the slow is smooth and smooth is fast, when you get to the point where it starts to look smooth, it is um, made to make it look like anyone can do it. It should be to the point where it looks like, oh, that's easy, but it's not. And it's a skill. And I want to bring up this other example, and that is esports gamers. Now I could bring up others. I could bring up, basketball players and the like, but I really like how esports gamers do because they use a lot of strategy where depending on the gameplay that they're in, they have to understand slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And they have to do it in split seconds, meaning that when they engage in a game, they have seconds to look around and scan, which would be the slow part, to see the terrain, to understand the resources at hand, to get a feel for their opponent, or if they're in a team, how their team is adjusting. And then once they've done this scan and started to take inventory and stock, then they have to find their feet, find their footing very fast to make it smooth. And then they do strategic things, tactics to gain a build up so that when it comes to a head and the end of the game is nigh, they can move with a greater momentum to win. And it takes a lot of self control, a lot of dexterity. Um, all of these things that we talk about so far that we've been talking about, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and that. Okay. And so I'm going to just say that if you're like, okay, well, why are we talking about this in my everyday life? I'm going to say the reason why we're talking about this is because there are many people who are out there who are like, I don't know how this happened, but there's a pandemic and I'm not prepared. And this is, now don't get me wrong, this is not about survivorship, prepping, or any of that kind of stuff. It has fingers into it, but that's not what this is about. This is more so about understanding how to make yourself become more mentally strengthened and be more agile in your wisdom on how to survey your surroundings and what to do, when to do it, even if you don't have the resources that you thought you were going to have. Okay. All right. Because, like I said, this is all about wisdom and helping us to be mentally and wisdom strong. Okay. So, in understanding the practicality of becoming this person who can move with a slow determination to become smooth, and then in turn, because you're so smooth, you become faster. Understand these things, that the key to implementing this particular strategy in your life at this time is to focus on having an ability to be accurate, having an ability to do surprising things that cannot be predicted or seen from not obvious. And that means that you have to work on your reflexes, on your intuition, and on those tactics that you're going to use to pull off your strategy. Okay. So, say for instance, you find that you are going to have to go without income for longer than would normally work. Okay. Because we're trying to keep this really practical. That's going to mean that it's going to take some time for you to slow down. And it's almost counterintuitive to what it feels like. But it's going to take time for you to slow down a minute so that you can gain control. And I don't want to say control over your mind, but control over your racing thoughts to start managing your mind and your body so that you'll be able to observe and see opportunities, so that you'll be able to correctly assess what you do have as resources, to suss out and get new perspectives, and even a new perception of what your life looks like, so that you'll be able to change it up and think counter to how you normally think when there isn't an obvious threat out there. Okay. And so to do that, slow allows you to take some time to understand your playing field. And not only that, when you look at things, you want to look at them and gain information on the details. You want to gain information on who are the players on the field. What are the available resources, and not just the obvious ones? Uh, Look at how you might be able to seize, control, or even lock up some resources that would be to your advantage. Now, this is not about dog eat dog. This is not about doing your neighbors in before they do you. It's not that. No, it's not. This is about being able to make a pathway from where you are to where you need to be in the best possible way for sustainability of your life, of your livelihood, your quality of life, and the like. Okay. Whether it be you just found out your kids are going to be at home for two plus weeks, and you're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't planning on that. Or you now have to work from home, or you have been furloughed without pay, or whatever. I don't know the specifics, but I do know that I want and I'm determined to be as useful to you as possible with this podcast, for times like this. Okay. To be a useful tool. I am your practical priestess of wisdom serving you. So that's why we're talking about this, so that you can get a chance to get more ahas, more ways of looking at what's going on. Okay. So with this whole slow, Think about it as if you are um, the the person who gathers all the materials that the master is going to use for a project. That means that you have to go and figure out not just the big things and not just the little things, but think about the causative things. And when we talk about the causative things, I want you to think about if, for instance, you know that you need supplies. Well, you might need some other things too. That means that you might need to check on making sure your insurance is up to date. Your foundational stuff is all right in case something happens. It means putting on your preventative hat. Or your preemptive hat to do what you need to be prepared for come what may. It kind of requires for you to look at as many possibilities as you can think of and then try to prepare for them. And that's what the slow does. So let's go back to like how we looked at Houdini. He didn't just work on his routines, he worked on his body conditioning. He worked on working with the people who would build his props, worked on understanding if he was going to be doing something outside, understanding the weather components, understanding the types of people who would be in town for not only his events, but for other things. Understanding that even though your life might be a microcosm within the world, you still have to take into account what the macrocosm of the world is doing as well. And I know it might sound like it's a lot, but it really doesn't have to be. What you want to do is look at, like I said before, look at, if you can't do anything else, look at what you can do that's in your wheelhouse that's going to allow you to assemble the bare minimum of what you need. Now, I know. Yesterday we talked about toilet paper and supplies of that kind, but we also need to look at what happens after. Like, okay, you have made it through the pandemic. What happens after? If you were sequestered, everybody else was too. And so, even though you might be thinking that, okay, it's going to be totally back to normal, it always takes time to ramp back up after something has been stopped. And so, you have to possibly look at not only your supplies, but your mental capacity to keep it together for a protracted amount of time. What does that look like socially? If you live in the home with people, what does that look like in your community? If you are in a cul-de-sac or if you are in a rural area, does that mean that you uh, forget to look and make sure that everybody living with you that you purposefully do not try to make a lot of trash so that you don't have to live with trash for weeks on end because you're not guaranteed that the trash pickup is going to be running and you don't have any place to put it. Thinking just past in that slow time that you take to count up all the cost, assemble what you can, think of worst case scenarios, think of protracted scenarios, and think of what's in your immediate atmosphere or your environment that you can take advantage of, those types of things. Understanding that would be, really great. It might be where you're like, okay, we're going to be in for a while. So we're going to compost a lot of stuff and then we're going to recycle some things and the compost can go here outside and and redoing, refiguring, reframing how you normally go about life. That's that slow part. And what the slow part does is it helps you to start practicing, getting ready so that by the time you're ready to move into showtime, it becomes smooth. You worked out the kinks. And I'm going to tell you, smooth helps you to not have unforced errors. Smooth helps you to do things in the most effective and efficient manner possible. And that's why smooth is fast. It's not that you're going fast, it's just that because everything is working like a well oiled machine, that means that you're able to get from point A to point Z in a faster time than if you keep running into cogs and snags and untested unknowns and the like. And so it works for your benefit to take the time at the front end to, take that time to be slow enough to figure out some things. And then this fast occurs when you're able to navigate this new field in a fluid and smooth fashion. You see, like I said before, because you do end up making less mistakes and you move forward faster than those who try to go fast from the beginning. Now, I do want to talk about a first mover's advantage. And that first mover's advantage comes when you employ the slow part of this strategy. And don't get it wrong. First mover's advantage does not necessarily mean fast mover's advantage. First mover's advantage means that you're the one who is willing to start assembling the resources that you're going to need, whether it be tangible things or it's knowledgeable things. You see, in this pandemic, there are a lot of people who have forgotten to start assembling knowledge of what to do, of how to do things. Just because you have a mountain of toilet paper, hand sanitizer, Lysol, and all that stuff does not mean that you're necessarily as prepared if you don't know the best ways at this particular time, or creative good ways at this time to ration and to teach everybody who is in your household how to live in times like this. Too many times people get all the stuff, and then because they are not well versed in how to actually use things, meaning they don't know how to be smooth with it, they run through it, force through it, and it doesn't work as smoothly as they would like, and then you have problems. And I've been one of those people who thought, "Oh, I'm good. I got all this stuff. I'm ready, blah 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 blah." And it didn't go well because I didn't plan well. And so it's not only the things that you accrue, it's also the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding of what it is. There are going to be people that are going to know the right questions to ask. There are going to be people that are going to understand the right things that don't seem obvious to most, of things that you need to go and procure, and things that you need to be ready for. Okay. And so if that means that you need to possibly, I don't know, I'm just picking something out of the air, but say for instance, you need to get oxygen because you've got people that suffer from panic attacks and other things, and being cooped up might bring that on. That's something you need to consider. Maybe you need to have a water filter because there's a lot of people in your house and you just don't even have the space to keep enough water for 2 weeks, 30 days, 6 weeks, or whatever, being cooped up in the house with five, six people, needing to drink their fill of water every day. Different little things. And like I said, I'm not trying to be exhaustive in the examples I throw out, and I'm not trying to monger. I'm really trying to get you to get these ahas and say, oh, okay, well, now is the time where I can still have a first mover's advantage to start prepping, scanning my environment to seize, control, or even lock down some resources that I particularly need. Let me tell you about um, an esports legend that started doing this type of strategy, and now it's become almost mandatory when you become an esports gamer. And his name is Dennis Fong. And back in the late 1990s, he was schooling people on a little modem driven uh, computer, and everybody else was starting to move to network. So they had faster computation and ability to get online, but his strategy was so sound that he was beating them left and right. And he was known for having very fast reflexes, tactics and an intuition to know what his competitors were doing and to know their skills. And that comes from being slow enough to not just start running and doing, but to take time to scan your environment, see what's out there and available. And what I liked about how they described his style and what he was doing was that instead of being reactionary, he slowed down enough to become very proactionary. And with his proactiveness, he didn't just react to the things that the game did or even that the players did. He was preemptive. If, say, for instance, he is going through a tunnel and he sees some loot, that's for, and I don't know if this is the case. I'm just trying to give you a visual. And say, for instance, his specialty has nothing to do with that loot, but he knows that his opponent might um, make use of it. He would go on and grab the loot, even though didn't even know if his opponent would see the loot or come down that way, but he was preemptive enough so that he would gather it. And he would get to the point where he was able to lock down that board without having to do a lot at the end because he had been so preemptive to control his field by having gone slow in the beginning so that things ran smoothly. And thus, he was able to get to the finish line to win faster. Yes. And when I saw that, I was like, hmm. And of course, it reminded me of some military strategies that I've seen in the past and some other things. And I was like, that is really brilliant. And like I said, so he was like the first one to start doing that in these pitted competition game plays. And so now he's kind of like up there with Mike. Like Michael Jordan is to basketball, he's like that to the esports gaming world. And I was like, that's really cool to do that. So let's talk in our last few minutes. I wanted to kind of like move into some practicalities of things that you can do. So understand that when you start wanting to take advantage, get the first mover's advantage, and use and employ some wisdom. The first thing I want you to do is, if you have the time, go slow because slow of doing your environmental scanning of uh, going through all the different areas of your life and the life of your loved ones that you have to be um, involved with is going to require you to go through with a fine tooth comb and explore. That might mean that you go and assemble everything that you need, make a book, a life book of everybody, gather everybody's documents and or write it down on a disc and then print it out so you'll have a hard copy that goes in the safe so that if anything happens you can grab that stuff. And looking at not only the survivor side of it but looking at what happens after any events that might be coming up. See, it's not only when you're dealing with the slow part, you're not only trying to just deal with the terminal point of, oh, this is it. You want to always look past it to the day after or the days after. And I've talked about that before in previous podcasts where we talk about you expect what you get, and if you only plan up to the D-Day, that's not good because there's going to be life after that D-Day. Hopefully, you do it right, and if you plan for it, it will happen. And so don't just look at, oh, I'm just planning to this point. Yeah, plan to that point, but also plan past it. And because you plan past it, it will help you get through that point with, you guessed it, a smoother route. The next thing is talking about smoothness, start practicing. One of the things that I'm currently doing with my slow, smooth to fast is getting back on a regimen, a daily schedule that is not as strict as it can be, but it has a higher propensity for me to achieve it, to maintain a sense of norm as much as possible with a little bit of flexibility. Because I will say this last week or so has been crazy pandemonium, and I have been off my schedule. And I'm going to tell you what. One of the things that I am having to do is regulate the amount of time that I spend on my phone with notifications for news and the like, and even scheduling that so that I can, you guessed it, have a smooth transition so that I can move through trying times as such as now as fast as possible. And I want to encourage you to do that as well. Create a schedule for this time and adhere to it. Don't make it so strict that it's hard to, but make it where it gives you enough structure to run things smoothly in your household and with those that you have to be around. And then understand that it is not a loss for you to take time to prep and to practice, because if you do, then you will get to your destination faster than if you would if you had not done these things. And so I know this might sound difficult, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you a little food for thought to consider how you can go from slow to smooth and smooth to fast. So, guess what, you guys? Yes, my time is up. I really do thank you for yours. This has been MichelleSpiva, your practical priestess of wisdom, with today's podcast of Wisdom Smack. Mwah. Don't forget to check the show notes. Please like, share, comment. If there is something you'd like for me to cover in future podcasts, please reach out, send me a note. And as always, I appreciate you very much for meeting with me daily. And yes, this is a daily show. So, with that being said, I am going to leave you to it. I encourage you to get on the good foot and start working out your plan to make things go as smoothly as possible. Until tomorrow, I am going to just send you hugs and kisses. I'll see you. And that's going to do it for today's podcast of Wisdom Smack with MichelleSpiva. If you like this podcast, please help us get the word out. Like, comment, subscribe, and even share. And if you really like it, please help us continue to get the word out by considering using this show's link for Amazon. So when you want to go to Amazon and you do all of your general shopping, please use MichelleSpiva.com/AMZ. It's simple as that. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and this show might receive a little bit of commission that will go towards helping to further get these episodes out to you and to others. So thank you so much for listening. This has been MichelleSpiva with Wisdom Smack. Bye.